Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Can I ask you all, please, to take your seats? So we're going to begin the debate. So charge your glasses, please, ladies and gentlemen, and take your seats. Sorry? Okay, I have to lean right down. Nobody can hear. We'll get the other one. Hello? Can everybody hear me? Now you... No? I'll have to shout. Good evening. Can you all take your seats, please? Charge your glasses and get ready for the debate. We've got the bar open, which gives this a proper parliamentary atmosphere. This is a parliamentary-style debate, our annual debate. And my name is Harold Ellison. I'm going to be chairing the debate this evening. I have to confess that, I'll give you a little confession. When I was at school, I was a very bad pupil, and I got into a lot of trouble. And I got into trouble once for trying to start a revolution to get rid of the school uniform. I got into trouble on another occasion when I was caught drinking with a friend of mine who actually ran a brewery under the main staircase in the school. And, you know, you've been talking a lot this conference about ingenuity and innovation, but take it from me, my friend Nick Bruce showed real innovation with that brewery until it started to bubble out from the staircase floorboards. But at that stage, of course, I blamed the teachers for all my woes, and I would willingly have swapped my teachers for robots. I then went on later in life to become a politician, and I dare say that most of you would swap most politicians for robots as well. But I've got to be impartial in this debate, so I'm not going to express an opinion one way or another. But we've got, I think, a very, very challenging and interesting motion for debate this evening, which is that this House believes that that AIs could, should, and will replace teachers. And as I say, this is a parliamentary-style debate, so we have two speakers on each side of the motion. We've got two speakers for the motion and two against. And our first speaker, who I'm going to ask to come to the podium, is Donald Clark, who will be well known to many of you and who's spoken often in these debates before. Donald's spent 30 years in the e-learning industry. He's an investor in EdTech, and particularly in AI, and his new company, Wildfire, won a major award last night in London for its work on artificial intelligence. He recently predicted, interestingly, both Brexit and the Trump victory in the US elections based on AI polling techniques. And although he's a teacher and a professor, he will argue for the motion, and I suppose, therefore, for his own extinction. So it's over to you, Donald.
Thank you, Harold. Good evening, everyone. You've all had a few scoops, as the Irish would say, I would hope, a few drinks. So I've got the challenging task of convincing many of you in the audience, who are, after all, teachers, that you're going to be replaced by two letters, artificial intelligence. Well, this is going to be a tough call for our team, I think, but let's have some fun and go for it anyway. Okay? Now, the first thing I want to say about our team is we have one variable on our side, which is time. So remember this proposition. We have an infinite amount of time to complete our arguments here, that you will be replaced by artificial intelligence. And are you seriously telling me that all lawyers will be replaced, accountants will be replaced, managers will be replaced, but not teachers? Are we really seriously thinking that we are absolutely unique as human beings, could never possibly be affected by this technology? That surely is a conceit. Surely a conceit. Everybody else is going to have this, but not us. That's where we are as human beings together. Look at the progress we've made over just a few centuries, given the history of our species. That will continue. Now, I'm going to talk about the brain. I almost lost my brain there. I have a prop. okay? Remember, AI isn't about this. It isn't about the brain necessarily. Why is it not about a brain? Well, many of you are teachers, and you know how hopeless this organ is, okay? It takes about 25 years to educate this thing, so it's even remotely useful in the workplace. 25 years to train it to become a teacher. Even then, it probably takes you another 5 years before you become any use at all. It's easily bored. How many times today have you wished you were outside the room you were sitting in? Inattentive. It suffers from cognitive overload. It forgets almost everything. Ebbinghaus, that German, 1885, you will forget. You've forgotten almost everything you sat listening to today. That's science, folks. Okay? On top of that, it gets demotivated. It's sexist. It's racist. It has dozens of cognitive biases. This is not the standard by which we should be judging teaching or the future here. And it sleeps 8 hours a day. Gets ill, gets hangovers, can get mentally ill even. It can't network, so if Harold has some expertise, I can't download it to my brain. And then the fatal objection, of course, is the damn thing dies. Kaput. Gone. AI doesn't die, folks. It goes on forever. Okay, and let's not imagine that this is about copying the brain. I didn't fly here from London in EasyJet on an aircraft that flapped its wings. We didn't copy birds. We produced better technology, okay? We didn't go faster by studying the legs of a cheetah, of course. We went faster by inventing the wheel. We invented something much better than the existing technology. In fact, we invented something through AI. I've never driven a car in my life. I don't have a license. I can't wait to get a Tesla that just turns up to the bar and delivers me home without me having to worry about anything. That's so Scottish, that sentence, but nevertheless. Okay? Now, why now? Why is AI such a big deal now? Well, it's been around since Euclid, really, but we do have this confluence, this perfect storm of really rapid advances in machine learning and the maths inside AI. We also have this huge advance in terms of very cheap technology and mobiles and computing power. We know all about that. The real fuel here, though, if you take AI as a rocket ship, the real fuel has been data. So suddenly we have the World Wide Web since about 2000, and that has provided oodles of data that's allowed the spaceship or AI to fly. So that's why AI is such a big deal now. But let's get down to brass tacks, because I'm going to talk about teaching. The proposition is, will teachers be replaced by AI? And I took these 6 criteria from teacher training courses in England. These are the 6 things, by and large, that all teachers have to know about, okay? So let's go through them one by one. Answering questions and finding out stuff. Well, we do have Google, perhaps the biggest pedagogic shift in my lifetime. I can remember when Google didn't exist. If you ever did do a PhD or any research, you will have spent 6 months of your life wandering up and down library shelves trying to find books and journals. And look at the wonders it gives us. YouTube for learning how to do things, all the OER resources, Khan Academy, you name it, Google gives us an insight into that world. More recently, however, we may have a return to something that's more like Socratic learning. So we have Socrates. When Plato came along, he set up a university. It lasted for 900 years. That's when the lectures began. Think about Socrates. Socrates liked to speak one-on-one with his pupils. We may have that opportunity now because AI is now delivering natural language processing, which means it can understand very, very complex sentences, which you as a learner or I as a teacher utter. And all of these companies are in that game. So the first one's ticked off. The second one is student support. Okay. My son's doing a degree in AI in Maastricht in Holland, and he sent me a link to this. This is at Georgia Tech, where 300 AI kids, okay, they're all smart kids, they're doing their degree, and faculty decided to swap out a teaching assistant, they have 9 teaching assistants, with an AI bot. And not one of the 300 kids spotted the fact that it was a bot. Very interesting. What was even more interesting is that one of the students put it up for a teaching award. This is absolutely true. How bizarre. Why? Because it got back to them within a minute. Now, if you work in a university and you've spoken to your students, it's not minutes, it's days and weeks before you get feedback on any assignment. Beyond that, we have the work of Chris Peach, who I really love in Stanford and Google, who have taken big data sets from Khan Academy of Mathematics, young kids who are doing maths, okay? And with 0.85 certainty, they can predict what that child's going to do in the next question. Now, as a maths teacher, that is brilliant, well beyond the capabilities of any maths teacher, being able to diagnose almost everybody in this room simultaneously and work out what you are going to do next. Beyond this, here's an amazing bit of AI, something every kid loves. Every 13-year-old knows about this. Every teacher hates. And this is an app on your mobile. You show it a maths problem, even if it's handwritten, and it gives you the answer. How cool is that? You can see why kids love it. You can see why teachers hate it. But of course, it also, if you press the steps button, gives you all the steps between the question and the answer, which is where all the teaching takes place. That's what I used to do. And that's brilliant. I wish I'd had that as a kid. I wouldn't have been stuck at home on my maths homework, endlessly perplexed. Then we have Duolingo, 150 million people, market cap $500 million, revolutionizing language learning. Again, AI-driven out of Carnegie Mellon. Quite smart tech in there around spaced practice, all that Ebbinghaus stuff that I've been talking about earlier. Beyond that, we have these bots. There was this really interesting thing from Microsoft last year, which was Tay, which was a bot that suddenly turned into a sex-crazed Nazi. I don't know if you remember that. All the newspapers in England and everybody over 50 thought it was the end of civilization as we know it. That's bullshit. Basically, young kids know what bots are, they know you can train them, and they were playing around with it. That's a sign that AI is working, and generally, young people understand this technology, but all these other guys are playing at this game. Okay, subject knowledge, another teacher skill here. This was Obama's last act. Read this document, absolutely brilliant. And it talks about capturing the expertise of experts, be they teachers, in this case people in the Navy with 7 to 10 years experience, using that experience within AI to teach and tutor younger people, and they have this massive uptake after a 16-week intensive course in actually doing the stuff along with an AI-driven tutor that's been fed by that expertise. Planning and teaching courses, that's another one. That's what we do for a living sometimes. Again, this is a project I've been involved in for 2 years. You just give me your document, your PowerPoint, your video, your podcast, whatever you as an academic or teacher have as base material. I put it into this engine. The semantic engine looks at this content and works out what's important for the learner, not the teacher, and creates e-learning automatically. One button. Have you ever had to create online learning? How long does it take? Months. This takes minutes. Beyond that, it will then go off and curate content for you, and will find interesting things that you might not even have been aware of as a teacher, with a certainty rating over its relevance. Beyond that, it will give you spaced practice. Ebbinghaus again. You forget everything. How do we stop you forgetting things as a learner? We give you repeated practice over time. And the only way to do that is to have an algorithm that works out what you personally need, and we deliver it to your mobile on a sort of logarithmic scale going out into the future. Human teachers can't do that. They don't have enough time. You need the maths to deliver that stuff. So another example of AI doing something interesting. And then the big one. Adapting to the needs of all learners. If you've ever taught a lecture with 600 or 300 students in it, you have no idea what's going on in their head. If you've taught a classroom of 30 kids, again, incredibly difficult. But we have the technology now, through AI, that will keep an eye on every single child as they move through maths, history, physics, whatever the subject. Okay? You can educate everyone uniquely. How does it do this? The standard maths curriculum is the one up the top, a fairly standard linear thing, and people sort of drop off the conveyor belt in high school. Kids just drop off all the time because they're pushed too quickly, don't quite get this before they go on to that. The truth of the matter is mathematics is a set of sort of logical relations in a network like this in terms of the dependencies. And what you really have to do is get that subject into a network and allow people to vector through the content based on their individual needs. It's a bit like having a sat-nav in your car. You need something that's really smart, that embodies lots of learning theory, and that takes you on a learning journey, and if you go off course, it gets you back on course again. No human teacher can do that well with 30 kids in a classroom, because behavior management is the primary problem, by and large, okay? If you want evidence of this, then in ASU, a big project we've been involved in, student attainment, 76 to 94%, that's almost unknown. If you get 3%, increase in attainment in education, you're published. You know, if you get this sort of increase, it's fantastic. Do students like it? Blue and green? That's the student responses. Boy, do they like it. They much prefer it to the diet of lectures they were receiving prior to this. Then the final one, assessment. If only I had a few more papers to grade, said no damn teacher ever. And you know teachers, I know teachers. How long does it take in a restaurant or a dinner party for somebody to start complaining about the marking they've got to do, especially at Christmas time? It's the bane of their lives. But you can actually make inroads with this stuff if you want. Some of it can be automated, not all of it necessarily, but let's look at what can be done here. When I walked out the conference hall this morning after listening to Roger speak, I went across the hall and there was this on the wall of a company here. And I'm sure this is quite good. But isn't it amazing that the only example of the use of AI I could find in education at this conference is checking on whether students cheat? Isn't that bizarre? Is that the culture that we've built here? That people submit essays? We know the essay is an absolutely hopeless form of assessment. This lobbing essays at academics on a regular basis. Students should be able to submit an outline of an essay, submit drafts of essays. We should be able to use AI to give feedback on those drafts. Learning how to write is a long and arduous process. You don't teach it by simply making people repeatedly write essays. We now have automated essay marking. So you can train these systems with 100 good rubric-marked essays on some subjects, such that the marking will be indistinguishable from the academic when they're marking the paper. So this is technology that's with us now. When it comes to online assessment, then we also have facial recognition, real-time facial recognition. And I don't know if you've ever done one of those Coursera things where you type in your little typing test at the beginning. That's AI. It knows your unique typing pattern so that when you sit the exam and type stuff in, it knows it's you. So suddenly AI is helping us achieve those assessment roles. Okay? So 10 things to summarize that AI does that teachers can't. Okay, the first one, you may argue with me, but it is largely free of gender, race, and cognitive biases. I know that Tricia this morning was talking about the implicit bias in all AI, which I don't buy. If I have a set of random 5 numbers and I resort them from smallest to largest, it's quite difficult to understand why that would be either sexist or racist. You know, let's not have these blanket statements about AI. It's all biased. All algorithms are biased. This is plain nonsense. AI is many, many, many different things, in fact. And we have to be careful with these accusations. It never forgets, it only gets better, never sleeps, tires, gets ill or bored. It does things that brains cannot. We know that. It can personalize the learning in the way I've outlined today, automatically improve the courses. If you make a mistake or there are errors in the design of your course, AI can spot statistically whether too many students are falling out at that point. It's probably your bad design. This has happened often in the courses I've been involved with at ASU, where the question was simply badly designed, not the student's fault. Of course, you can network them. So we now have cloud robotics, where we may have a whole load of robots doing a task and learning how to do a task in manufacturing, but they share that empirical experience. We can't share that. We don't network our brains. I can't download anything from your brain. We have this massive scale, of course, on AI. It always gets better, and it never dies. So sorry? Well, and so do I. I crash frequently. I crash about 20 minutes in any presentation because I'm inattentive. Okay? Now, Roger this morning made a very good point, that AI is not one thing, and that the real promise here is not the current breed of AI. Remember, I have the infinity of time at my disposal to replace teachers, because I think there will be a coming together of AI and other technologies which allow learning by doing, which is Roger's big thing and it's my big thing. And I think we've got some wonderful confluences here, one of them being this. It's my sister. She's on a roller coaster. She's coming round the bend here. Watch this. Now I'm going to take her on a bungee jump right to the edge of the thing, right? She's going to jump off 500 foot.
hell was that? I feel a bit, oh,
Right,
you're
take that.
kidding me.
I'm going to walk her
Look at
forward
that arrow, yeah?
gently.
You ready? You know it's okay this one, you're just in the arrow, right? Now look, like, move her forward a step. Right. Now look up at the sky.
Here she goes.
Just calm. Look round you. Look
She
right
looks
behind
around,
you,
there are
right
people
behind
going,
you.
jump, jump,
Way
jump.
round, further round. That's it.
Waves to the
Amazing goal.
And here she
Right,
goes.
I'm going to walk you forward, right? I'm going to walk you forward to the edge, right? Have a wheel go. You ready?
So she's coming to the edge now, right?
You ready?
Now she's falling. Upside down. I'm sorry, I had to pixelate that. Okay. Now, I don't know about you. I clap for my sister. Thank you. I'll tell her. I don't know about you, but when I've been teaching, I've never seen any learner as excited as that. Ever. But this is the sort of thing we can have. Learn by doing in these worlds, the emotional impact of learning, that full attention, transfer, context, all those wonderful things that all the learning theory tells us is important, may be within our grasp here if we combine it with all the smart stuff that AI provides and AR. So I think we're on the cusp of something good there. This was Shiva. And an important point to leave you here is AI will destroy. It will destroy jobs. We know that. This is tragic and politically awful. But we must use AI for good as well. We must find some political solutions because they are political. But why shouldn't we, educators, grasp the technology to use it for a social good, which is learning? Let's not leave AI to the military, to Wall Street, to bankers. Let's us grab the technology and use it for a good in our world with our learners. So as Shiva creates and destroys, let us create if others destroy. And as I said, you saw a glimpse, I'll review those 3 words. It doesn't matter. Resistance is absolutely futile. You're not going to stop this stuff. So embrace it and use it. Thank you very much for listening.
Okay, thank you very much, Donald. That was very entertaining and interesting. I should have given a disclaimer before that our speakers don't necessarily believe what they're saying, and you have to take that into account. Although that's not to say that Donald didn't believe what he was saying, because I think he probably did, even though he was arguing for his extinction. Our next speaker is Nell Watson, who is an engineer, an entrepreneur, and a futurist thinker with a long-standing interest in the philosophy of technology and how extensions of human capacity drive emerging social trends. She founded Poikos in 2010, which is a machine learning-driven AI for body measurement, and she lectures globally on machine intelligence, AI philosophy, and human-machine relations. Nell, over to you.
Am I on? Good. Hello, everyone. Hello. I am a self-confessed, happy-clappy AI evangelist. I believe strongly in the power of artificial intelligence to improve our lives and to help make us better human beings and to help improve the human condition. And yet, when I was asked to come here and examine the question of whether AI could, should, and will replace teachers, I was forced to think long and hard and to look at different perspectives that were a little bit new to me. I began to think about the role of the teacher. This role, the sacred role within all of our societies, which has been passed down for thousands of years between Aristotle and Alexander the Great, and therefore on down the centuries. I began to consider teaching, not just as something that one performs or works upon, like a machinist in a factory, but rather more like a gardener working to make the most beautiful and happy little flowers. We today have so many educators and entrepreneurs in this room, and many fellow travelers along the educational and learning space. And I'm certain that many of you, in your experiences, have come across very strange answers to questions. Something like this. A cheeky answer, perhaps, but kind of correct. Our cognition as human beings is incredibly diverse. We have this assumption that all of us are more or less seeing the same colors and thinking the same way. It's not really true. The more that we learn from neuroscience, the more we discover the vast diversity of thinking, learning styles, cognition, ways of experiencing the world and its many phenomena. It's not enough to just assume that everybody thinks the same way you do, or that everybody will interpret a given question in a certain way. One of the remarkable qualities of Homo sapiens is that our brains are not just one big blob, as Donald mentioned, but they are in fact built from many different packages. The reptilian brain, the mammalian brain, and its latest post-beta expansion pack, the prefrontal cortex, which gives us the ability to strategize, to think about the future, and most importantly, to consider the minds of other individuals. We can look upon another person or a child and consider what is going on within their mind. What are they thinking? How are they thinking? So an answer is wrong, but more importantly than whether it's correct or not, is why it's wrong, and what is their method of thinking that drew them to that conclusion. And as a teacher, how can we help them move from their current method of thinking to a more ideal one? These are difficult questions. And it's this property of our wonderful mirror neurons that I don't believe machines will truly replicate within our long lifetimes. I fear that a machine, given a student with creative answers, will give a rather ineffectual response. Multiple choice tests are not sufficient for truly understanding who a person is and why they made that decision. This is one reason why I believe that AI is not going to replace the role of teachers anytime soon. Something else, something that Donald mentioned briefly, is the fact of algorithmic-based biases. We don't just have different ways of experiencing the world or different ways of processing words or mathematics, but we have different ways of experiencing it on a subjective level. Here we have the same search algorithm, which is looking for a professional haircut and an unprofessional haircut. And you will see that there is a striking difference in how that is expressed. It's not the fault of the algorithm. It has training data, which is largely based upon human-generated data. And within that mix are a bunch of unfortunate biases and very stupid prejudices. But it presents a problem. There is a chance that we can have technologically driven social problems because of this issue, because of algorithmically generated prejudice. I am proud to serve on the scientific advisory board of this group, diversity.ai, We are working hard to help make this problem softer, less likely to cause unfortunate prejudices and biases within our society. We want to make better training sets for machine learning algorithms and help create best practices to avoid these kinds of scenarios happening again. Now, in the unfortunate event that a human is stupid enough to be biased, we can point it out, usually, and we can call them on it. But an algorithm is a black box. We don't know what's going on inside it. It's very difficult even for the original programmer to debug. It's one of the main areas of research in this space, but it's not something we're going to fully resolve anytime soon. Another reason why I believe that we should not enable AIs to be pure teachers. Take a look at this coach. This coach has a role. The role of the coach is to improve performance. And that performance is generally something which can be benchmarked, right? You can improve efficiency or the correctness of something by X%. But it is very different to have a coach as opposed to a mentor. Mentors don't really go by benchmarks and yardsticks and percentages. It's a much more holistic kind of role, where you're looking at the blossoming of that person as a whole character, as somebody that will evolve over time in many different roles and in many different facets of their character. Machines may make wonderful coaches. They can help us and help our students pinpoint areas where they're a little bit weaker, where they can do with some help to get stronger. But they are not and will not anytime soon be equipped to look at the whole person in a holistic sense and to draw out the very best of them. That is truly the role of a teacher, a human teacher. And I believe that the role of the teacher, ultimately in our society, is to express agency. Agency is a philosophical term, but boiled down, it basically means the ability to choose and to make good choices about oneself, what one would prefer to be doing, how to spend our lives. These are not questions of what or when, but rather why. The great questions, the existential questions, the ones we type ourselves into Google, desperately trying to find similar souls to ourselves sometimes. But they are not ones which can be answered by machines. Machines, their agency cannot and will not match that of a human being. And together, all of these elements make even I, the AI evangelist, doubtful that machines ever could, should, or will replace teachers. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Nell. Well, we've had our first two speeches, and I'm going to ask our two other speakers also to speak for 10 minutes, and then we'll throw the discussion open to you. So please start thinking of your questions and contributions. Our next speaker is Christoph Benzmüller, who's been working at the boundary of computational logic, artificial intelligence, computational linguistics and computer-supported mathematics with several projects and at institutions such as Cambridge and Stanford, and now at the Freie Universität Berlin, where he lectures in mathematics and computer science. Christoph.
Yeah, thank you, Harold. Can you understand me? Okay. Hello, yeah. I'm really delighted to be here at this event. It's a wonderful event. I'm the first time here. And in the sense, it's a home game for me, actually, because I'm, as you said, living here in Berlin since 2011, enjoying the city very much, and I'm heading a small research team here at Freie Universität. So yes, I do believe that AI can and will gradually replace teachers. I also do believe that we should utilize AI technology in education whenever this improves the teaching quality. We should, in fact, not be afraid of the move, and in the long run, I think we will anyway not be able to prevent or stop it. Instead of making head against the move, we should rather seek to optimally handle the transition phase, which, as I think, we have already entered. Of course, we need to address the social implications that are imposed by the move. But let's face it, AI technology will have an impact on the labor market on a global scale. And the education sector is just one part of these global developments. In fact, in many other areas, the changes will be much faster. They will be even disruptive. In the education sector, this will, I guess so, be much less the case. So, anyhow, we need an overall and general political answer to those kind of labor market problems. Personally, by the way, I'm favoring a basic income scheme as a possible solution, possibly in combination with a suitable taxation scheme for AI technology. And remember that such a proposal is meanwhile also shared by major industry leaders. Last week there was a report on Joe Kesa, leader of Siemens, in this direction. Well, and after all, this could mean that we all have more time to actually spend time with our kids at home, to take back again those mentoring aspects which were mentioned in the previous talk and do them ourselves as parents. I would actually like to spend much more time with my kids instead of working 60 or 80 hours. So, the should part is of course delicate, but do we really have a chance? Let me now focus more on the can and will parts of the move in the remaining minutes. I will present two core arguments: exponential innovation in AI and own experience. Let me start with the first one. Exponential innovation. AI clearly has seen summer phases and winter phases before. I mean, phases of exaggerated enthusiasm and promises, and phases of stagnation and disappointment. But since a decade or so, I believe we have entered a phase of accelerated global warming in the area of AI. And, well, some prominent figures even predicted the emergence of an superintelligence or singularity, maybe even within a few decades. So to make it very clear, I'm not sharing these opinions. There are still several key issues to be solved to make superintelligence to emerge. Exponential innovation alone is not sufficient for this to happen. Nevertheless, the speed of innovation in AI is currently extremely high, and it's further accelerating. Hence, for a wide range of concrete application scenarios, we will see AI technology developing quickly to the point that human skills and human performance will be matched and surpassed. In a more challenging application area, we will see humans and machines team up and divide the work in such a way that humans only focus, of course, on those aspects where they are still superior. Just last week, I was invited at a business conference here in Berlin where robot process automation was discussed a lot. And it became very apparent how many accountant-like jobs are already at stake in the very few next years by actually rather simple digitalization and automation technology. And whether we like it or not, improved AI technology will also impact the education sector. In fact, I see a direct impact and an indirect one. First, in the direct sense, we currently see improvements in nearly all subfields of AI. Well, you all have heard about machine learning. It's also prominently discussed here at the conference. But that's not all AI. I mean, you have more in AI. There are many subfields which have excellent recent developments. There are areas like knowledge representation and reasoning, gaming sector, robotics, tutoring, dialogue systems, user interfaces, and so on and so on. So when combining the latest achievements in these subfields, which is of course very resource intensive and expensive, but when doing that, we can already build now greatly improved learning environments. And many in the room are actually, I think, already working in this direction. These systems will be highly adaptive and personalized, and they will be reusable. They will have access to the latest knowledge, they will be fun and entertaining to use. We have seen the video. And they will be tirelessly available 24/7. Second, there's an indirect sense in which the rapidly improving AI technology affects the education sector. As already mentioned, AI will have an impact on the job market on a larger scale. Old education patterns, like going to kindergarten, then going to school, afterwards a training on the job and going to university, followed finally by this one particular lifetime profession, will hardly be the case anymore in the future. Instead, jobs with specific skill requirements will come and go, and others will change significantly in short time. We will face a labor market in permanent dynamic transition. Now, this is again challenging in many ways. In some areas, the required special skills could eventually change so rapidly that the production of highly qualified teachers and training personnel will become the bottleneck. So, I think as an answer to the rapidly changing skills market, we need a flexible and adaptable solution on the teachers market as well. And my claim is that future AI technology will adapt much easier to such changing requirements than many human teachers will be able to. But let me now switch to my second main argument on why I believe that AI technology can and will replace teachers. This argument is related to my own experience from our awarded lecture course on computational metaphysics at FU Berlin. In fact, in this course, I have already started to replace myself as a teacher. And sadly for me, this worked quite well, much better than I expected. So what do we actually do in that course? Well, it's about detailed logical analysis of natural language, rational arguments in philosophy, but on the computer, completely on the computer. And what we teach there is non-trivial logics, and in combination with aspects of rational argumentation. And we do that to a heterogeneous group of students. So in students groups, and they come from maths, computer science, philosophy, and even physics. So what we pick up and address in this lecture course is an old vision of Leibniz, commonly known under the slogan calculemus, let us calculate. So Leibniz depicts here two philosophers who have a dispute. They can't agree who's right with his argument and who's wrong. And he says, wouldn't it be great if you two guys sit down, take your pen and paper, and write down your arguments in a formal language, in a formal logical language, and then use an associated calculus for that language and simply calculate, compute, whose argument is right and who's wrong. So it's exactly this vision depicted by Leibniz which we pick up in this lecture course. Our focus thereby is ambitious arguments in metaphysics, namely variants of the ontological argument for and against the existence of God. So the students in small groups pick up recent philosophy papers presenting such an argument, and then they start in group work, working just with the computer in formalizing and assessing the human constructed arguments. And by doing so, they learn a lot about logics, about rational argumentation, and so on. So basic skills we need all across our subjects. The enabling AI technology we use there is an interactive higher order approval system called Isabel. You may not know about it, but together with an elegant approach contributed by us, we realize on that machinery a universal logic reasoning that we need for such experiments. Now, the students can interact with that machinery 24/7, and the system tirelessly responds to the inputs. And they got really obsessed about it, so they really worked a lot, also overnight. I saw it on the emails we got from the students' feedback. In fact, the students' learning curve exceeded our expectations by far. The concept worked out so well that individual student projects have even revealed issues and flaws in human refereed philosophy papers. So they found errors in these papers which were refereed by humans. And we are now in the process of publishing these novel results. So now, the system we are using there is still far away from being really called an intelligent learning environment. For example, it doesn't incorporate any tutoring technology yet, any of the fancy things we have seen in the presentation before. But if it would include them, then my job as a teacher would, of course, be further reduced, and I could concentrate much better on the mentoring tasks, on these abstract level tasks. So yes, in many concrete subject areas, AI technology can already now replace teachers, at least partly. And in many areas, it will quickly get up to the task. And as soon as AI technology outperforms the outcome of traditional teaching, it will be utilized. Why shouldn't it? The standpoint is also prominently shared by others, and we have seen the pointer by Donald to the report by the US government preparing for the future of AI, where we saw the results on this tutoring system for Navy recruits. I think many in the room here have similar examples to such systems, and we could bring up those. So, yes, it seems that AI technology in fact already does, in some cases, replace teachers. Sure, elementary human-oriented skills related to our social, ethical, and cultural norms and aspects about our emotional and physical well-being are not so easy to be taught. Also, all these meta-level cognitive aspects, I think it's a long way to go. But these skills will remain territory then for human teachers for many years to come, and well, that's good so. But at the other hand, we don't know exactly for how long, because of this rapid speed in the development in our field. Remember that some prominent figures, and I'm coming back to the beginning, in the field have even predicted the near emergence of a superintelligence. I don't buy it, but if their prediction is true, then our complete debate here is anyway obsolete. So my vote is yes, AI can and will replace teachers. And about the delicate aspect of the should, we will eventually not really have much to say about or a big choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Christoph, for that. Our next speaker is Andrew Keane, who's the author of 3 books, The Cult of the Amateur, Digital Vertigo, and his current international hit, The Internet is Not the Answer. Andrew's the executive director of the Silicon Valley innovation salonFutureCast and host of the popular internet chat show Keen On. He's also a columnist for CNN and a commentator on the digital revolution. Over to you, Andrew.
Whoops. Thank you. So I always go last because I never prepare anything. So I have something to work off. Who said wonderful? Sounded a German pedagogue. Can you stand up? Who said that? My best story as a teacher, which is why I'm not a professional teacher, is I used to have a rule. I used to teach university. I was eventually thrown out, as I'm thrown out of most things. And I had a rule that you weren't allowed to wear dark glasses in class. And I was teaching in America somewhere, and it was an early morning class, and I was particularly irritated. Someone was wearing dark glasses at the back, so it was 8 o'clock in the morning. I told them, you can't wear dark glasses in class, take them off. So they took them off, and afterwards someone came up to me afterwards and said, that student was blind. Which is why I'm not a very good teacher, but sympathetic, empathetic. But maybe I can still argue for teachers. How many of you are teachers? And how many of you are anti-teachers? Good. Well, we had a discussion earlier about whether or not this, I think it's very hard to actually, one other question before I try and make my argument. How many of you have actually come in with one opinion and having heard these 3 speakers changed your mind? So, yeah, exactly. So you come in hard-baked here. Okay, so the question is, this House believes that AI could, should, will replace teachers. So what's the key word? Let me be a teacher here. What's the key word in the motion? Replace. Right. Who said that? Very, very good. Teacher's pet sitting at the front. Replace. That's the key word here. Let's be clear about what we're arguing about. We're not suggesting that AI isn't important. And we're not suggesting that teachers aren't important. This motion suggests that there is something called AI, and I think one of the many weaknesses of my opponent's presentation so far is that they completely failed to define what AI means. I'm not going to try because I'm arguing against it, but maybe they'll... Nobody knows. I mean, really, it's one of these phrases. It's like e-learning, right? Nobody knows what it means. It just, and the more people who use it, the more meaningless it becomes. We know there's something called algorithmic learning, machine learning, whatever we want to call it. The point is, the argument that I want to make, or the argument I think our team wants to make, is that these two things coexist. AI and teachers will continue to exist in the future. In other words, AI will not destroy, that could, should, or will not destroy teachers. Now, Donald argued, and I think his argument was very very logical in a simplistic way. I mean, basically what Donald did was said, all knowledge can be learnt by machines. Machines know AI, therefore machines can be teachers. It's a syllogism. He's taking the old model. Now we know in the industrial age we had a top-down rote system of education in which teachers were essentially machines. And teachers in our industrial age were supposed to train students to essentially become machinery, components in our industrial age. It's an education, an industrial 19th and 20th century education system premised on rote learning. So what Donald suggested is that machines can learn, and they can learn better than human beings. They can learn languages, they can learn science, they can do math better than human beings. They can learn law, they can learn medicine, and therefore they can teach. And in a sense, he's right, of course. The nature of the AI revolution, and I would acknowledge it's a massive revolution, even if I can't quite define what AI means. But it's a massive revolution. It's the most important thing to have happened this century. It will define this century. It's bound up in the replication of knowledge so that most of the things that we have traditionally done, particularly in the industrial age and in the industrial classroom, now can be done by machines. So, right, machines can learn languages. Machines can do math. Machines can hoover up law books and medicine books. And that will change education. It changes the very nature of our economies and societies. It's a profounder thing as the invention of the steam engine in the 19th century. Now, what does that mean then for us as human beings? Because after all, education is about the preparation of human beings, as Donald suggested, half facetiously. We spend the first 20 or 25 years of our lives learning how to be human, how to be adult, how to participate in society. Now, in the old times, we learned to become pieces, players in a machine age. Some of us did it more successfully than others. So what happens in the intelligent age of the machine? What happens in the age of the algorithm? Do we get taught by computers? Should we? Will we? Have to we become taught by computers? And of course, the answer is no. Why? My wonderful partner explained very simply. She brought up the key word in this debate, which is agency. Computers do not have agency. Computers do not have goals. Computers are premised on what we tell them to do. They have no autonomy. They have no logic of their own. They can't determine what I'm going to say next. They can't determine what you think of this speech. Computers do not have agency. We have agency. We've invented these wonderful, magical machines to do most of our heavy lifting, to do most of our grunt work, which is great. But what are we going to do? What are we going to do in an age of smart machines? How are we going to prepare our children for this age? And of course, the key message here is not that just teachers will survive, cling on. Teachers are indeed now central in this new world. If we are to build a viable new world, a world of human richness, then teachers become central, because teachers are about bringing out, as Nell said, they're about bringing out the holistic, the Socratic, the sacred role. And in the industrial age, there wasn't much of a space left for the sacred. In an industrial age where people prepared for society were supposed to learn by rote, there wasn't really much for them to do. And the good news is that they are, in this sense, being replaced by machines. So, in the future, our value as human beings in this new networked age will be doing the things that machines can't do. Otherwise, we have no value. Otherwise, we won't survive. We won't survive existentially, we won't survive philosophically, and we won't survive economically because we won't have any value. So teachers indeed become critical, but they become critical in an extremely different way. The goal of teachers in this new age is the teaching or the teasing. Teaching, I think, is a bad, old-fashioned industrial age word. The business of teaching is the teasing out of agency, the teasing out of the very thing that computers, artificial algorithms can't do. We don't know what they are. They aren't quantifiable. I'm not going to come here and give you a PowerPoint of 10 points because that is foreign to the notion of agency and foreign to the notion of teasing out agency. But what I can say for sure is if we survive as a species, and it's not guaranteed, but if we survive as a species at the end of this century, by which time AI will have reshaped our society in unimaginable terms, we will survive because of teachers. And if we don't survive, it's because teachers have failed to rise to the challenge, and we will indeed become slaves of the intelligent machine. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Andrew, and thank you to all our speakers for 4 excellent opening speeches. I'm now going to throw the discussion over to you, ladies and gentlemen. So if you want to ask a question or if you want to make a short comment or contribution, now is your chance. But the one thing I would ask you to do is please keep your remarks fairly brief so that other people have a chance to comment as well, because we've got about 25 minutes. And can you also introduce yourselves and wait for the mic before you start to speak? Yeah, gentleman there in the second row.
Yoni Gilman from Time to Know. My question is to the for side. If an AI can teach a certain skill, then shouldn't it also just do it? What's the value of teaching it anyway? And Also, the one thing that the AI won't teach us is how to control it. So that is at least one thing that we'll have to teach us, how to deal with AI and control it.
Thank you for that. I'm going to ask our speakers to respond to points in the summing up, which they'll do before we take a vote at the end, unless you ask a direct question, in which case I'll ask them either to respond individually or one from each side. So, the lady in the front row here.
Jolanta Galecka from Young Digital Planet in Poland. Actually, it's for Andrew, because I thought that you referred to sort of a different teacher. So I would like a description of that different teacher that's not going to be replaced by the AI, because it's not the one that we know, the industrial one.
Thank you. Yeah, do you want to reply to that quickly now, Andrew?
Can you hear me? Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I think perhaps closer in some ways to a therapist, psychologist, friend, lover. You know, the notion of distance, of course, is, again, very much part of the industrial age, of the separateness of the teacher and the classroom and group teaching. You know, one of the great beauties of our digital age is personalization, but I think a lot of personalization isn't real. The great teacher will be able to personalize. You know, someone brought up Socrates. Socrates remains the key figure in Western civilization, for whatever that's worth, as a teacher, not as a philosopher. Socrates never answered anything. All Socrates did was ask questions. And that tradition has been carried down. So the asking of questions outside also a formal academic sense. The challenge in the future is, again, the production of eclecticism. The specialization of in the industrial age, learning law or medicine or engineering or computer science, and assuming you could spend your life doing that is also, that period is finishing. As everybody said, we're going to need to do many, many different jobs. It's not what we know. You can't go to university now or school and learn stuff that will carry you through life. What will carry you through life is the ability to invent and reinvent yourself. What will carry you through life is the ability to think and rethink yourself in many different situations. And that takes a very different kind of, you know, whether we use the word teacher or mentor or therapist or friend. But this will happen. It has to happen.
Okay, thanks for that, Andrew. I'll just let the other side comment on that, or the first point that was made.
This is a really interesting question, I think, which is, if AI can teach all the skills, why doesn't it just do it on its own anyway? That will, in fact, happen. That's what happened in the agricultural revolution. The machines destroyed employment. It happened when we moved from the fields to the factories. They were automated. Then we moved into offices, and that's going to be automated, and we have nowhere else to go. But the real issue is using AI, not necessarily in that sense. I play chess. I've played chess since I was a boy. And I learned to play chess using AI because it's handy, it's available 24 hours a day, and it helps me. So it needn't, just because it can play chess any better than any human being, and my mobile phone has a chess app that's better than any grandmaster, doesn't mean to say that I don't have to learn to play chess. That's a quality decision I make. Even now, on Amazon, I will go on and I buy lots of academic books, and the AI system in Amazon will suggest sometimes books by Andrew, which I will buy on Amazon, and I like that. I want to be helped by AI because it opens up vistas that I wouldn't have had without AI. So it's not all bad, and it doesn't destroy that type of agency, which is useful in the new life that we might have when we are only working 2 days a week, when we go back to, I agree with Andrew about this pre-agrarian period that we may emerge into, if we can solve the political problem of the redistribution of wealth, which is unlikely in my lifetime. But I think, let's not be scared of it.
Okay, thank you for that. Another question
can I just
there, I think, just leave it.
Okay.
Is this thing working? Oh, now it is. I want to share a comment about your talk, Donald, because I think your talk is actually the perfect example of why AI cannot replace teachers, or at least people giving talks. Because your talk was kind of funny, it was interesting, it made me think, and I kind of doubt that, it was clear to feel your presence, and I kind of doubt that I would have felt the same if it was a computer giving your talk. So,
That's a good point.
Okay, yes, in the front row here. Yeah.
Ian Wigston, Brightfield Consulting. Will AI replace teachers before or after it replaces the non-reproductive function of parents?
Is that addressed to anyone in particular, or would you like them all to answer?
If we start with the fours and see what they get on.
Right. Who would like to comment on that?
On the thing that could I be replaced by a piece of AI? It's a good question. It's very interesting. You know, I came across this thing recently on Netflix. As everybody probably knows, Netflix is quite heavily AI-driven in terms of the algorithm that pushes actually cheap movies your way. It's quite evil in many ways. It's a downside. But there's a very interesting thing behind the scenes on Netflix, which is the first series of House of Cards. How many people watched the first series of House of Cards? Brilliant. How many people watched the second series? Equally as brilliant. What you may not know about the second series is they used data from the first series about when you dropped out from certain scenes in series 1, which they fed to the scriptwriters to improve the script for series 2. I have nothing against that. That's agency of a sort for me, because series 2 was great. There's a movie being written wholly and utterly by AI, which Sundance launched, and it's not very good, but it's a start. And they fed the AI with lots of science fiction stuff, and it came up with a pretty sort of passable script. They shot the script, and it's watchable. Now, we're right now, remember we have the infinity of time ahead of us here. Are we really saying that AI can't reproduce humor? Can't reproduce any of the stuff that I showed in my talk today? Of course it will. It's only a matter of time. It might not be next week, next year, within 10 years, but you'll be damn sure that it will.
I think the role of the parent is very interesting in contrast to teachers. I think the parent is really the first teacher and the one that has the greatest impact on the student, as it were. We as human beings have millions of years of evolution behind us, which is encouraging us to take an active interest in our younglings, our arrows that we throw forward through time, a mixture of genes, memes, and so forth. I think that that kind of active interest in these marvelous little biological neural nets that we spawn cannot easily be replicated anytime soon by machines. I think that it's possible to engineer machines to be kind, but I wonder if we will ever replicate anything quite like the mysteries and wonderful power of the human heart.
Thank you. Okay, let's have another question.
Yes.
Yeah.
My name. Oh, sorry.
Hello. Carl from Wallström, Norway. My perspective on this is humans, we have a very unique ability to create, to imagine. We have so many problems in this world that us as humans, if we collaborate, we can really solve and do amazing things. I just think it's a little bit of almost a pathetic excuse for maybe we think we're too lazy to solve these issues, and I think it's quite pathetic that we're so into technology to solve these issues for us, but instead we can just come together and solve them and create such a wonderful world. And yet when we unleash this beast, we have no idea what it can do, yet we have unlimited capability within our minds and we decide not to use it. I think that's just ridiculous.
I think your next door neighbour there wanted to, so while the mic's there, we'll take one from you. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Brian Mulligan from Sligo in Ireland. I wonder to what extent we have a sort of a fabricated disagreement here, that the panelists don't really disagree with each other at all. That if you look at it, there seems to be general agreement that if AI can replace teachers, then it will. It's inevitable if it can. Doesn't seem to be much discussion about whether it should. It's on the basis that it can't. And then when we look at it can't, we seem to move the definition of teacher in order to do that. So we're saying, oh, well, those that say it won't replace the teacher is because we have an image of a teacher that wasn't what you were thinking of a little while ago. So well done on the debates, but I don't think you disagree with that with each other that much anyway.
Okay, thanks for that. All our disagreements are fabricated, actually, but let's have another one.
Yes.
Anybody at the back? I haven't had anybody. There's someone in the middle there. There's a hand there. No, I decide it's in the middle there. So if you can take the microphone there, please.
Is this on? Yeah. Snorre Rubin from Denmark. This is a question more like this for Nell. You make a very decent case for why it's difficult for AI to replace the good teacher, the perfect teacher. But teachers aren't all good, and almost none of them are perfect. I'm sorry, I'm going to be lynched here in a minute. So how about all the others? How all the bad teachers, all the bad parents for that case, how about them? Will AI, when will they come and save us from all the bad teachers?
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
I think that's quite a powerful point.
Yes, in the row there.
Sorry.
If you just save it for the summing up. Yes, the lady in the white in the second row here.
Oh, thank you. My name is Marcia Wagner. I'm from the Netherlands. Now, of course, this is a non-discussion because you cannot stop this development. At the same time, I'm not a teacher, but it seems to me a quite boring job doing every year the same story in the classroom. So we should be happy that artificial intelligence and all kinds of technologies give us the possibility to make it an excellent learning job. So that's the first thing I want to say. And if we talk about teachers, then we're talking about a group of people. But I want to put in discussion that the big question is, who will be the teacher of tomorrow? We talk about the parents. We're disenabled parents at the moment in this time of transition. And that worries me, because we try to raise our children and prepare them on a future we don't know. And sometimes we even do not understand the current situation. And then we work with companies because we believe that they can also give us opportunities for delivering teachers. So for me, the big question is, who is the teacher of the future?
It's a great question, really good question.
You want my mic?
Yeah, you can't trust technology, right?
Just keep it brief, Andrew.
One of the interesting things coming from Silicon Valley is that the most popular school now in Palo Alto or Mountain View is a Waldorf school where technology isn't allowed, and all the people sending them there are the executives from all the top companies, Google and Facebook. Steve Jobs never allowed his kids to use an iPad or an iPhone until they were 15. So you're absolutely right. The teacher of the future will be freed of technology. You're going to see a huge growth in Waldorf-styled education, in Montessori, and lots of other alternatives. Now, the guy's question about the average teacher, like everyone else average in the machine age, will die. And good riddance.
I also want to comment in this direction. So I think we should really clearly distinguish between teaching and a particular subject and the the overall mentoring aspects. It's very important that we draw a distinction here. And even in school for teachers, as you mentioned, I mean, if AI technology sets free resources and these resources are not immediately, let's say, completely reduced, then it gives you lots of opportunities to actually concentrate more on those parts which are really the essential ones, and you have the AI technology do the job that's where it's better at. But in a larger scale, I see another point here, and I briefly mentioned it, and that's, I mean, I feel really bad about the current situation where my son is actually sent more or less the entire day to this institution, a daycare institution called school. And then there's one person there which is supposed to be now a mentor of that person. So I think that's not the ideal preparation for the future. So why do we actually believe that mentoring, this kind of mentoring we have been discussing, is a task for our schools? In school, I would expect them to learn maths, to learn concrete things. Why don't we take back this kind of responsibility for mentoring our younger generations in more societal variety and more breadth with our families, back in our friend structure. So if AI changes our future in a direction that we will all have more time, we will eventually be able to use it in that direction. So I'm not afraid of such a move. In fact, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm not happy with a situation like now where we all just head for our jobs and put our kids somewhere and then complain about the bad mentoring somewhere. So this is not what I see as the ideal future. And
Okay.
therefore, I think AI technology can help here.
Okay, thanks for that. No, let's take it. We're running out of time. In fact, we've run out of time, but I'm going to take 3 more questions or points from the floor. Yeah, in the third row here.
Okay, my comment is this. My name is Heido Samaras. I'd like to say that as teachers, we teach a lot of declarative knowledge. I know this is going on maybe a little bit more to what you were saying before, but we teach a lot of declarative knowledge. We teach for exams, for tests. So I think all that could be freed by an AI machine that could teach all that. We would have the time to do other things. But my other concern is, having read books like, I don't know if you know Bostrom's book on superintelligence, should we be preparing for where those AI systems might be leading to? Should we start designing those systems in a specific way? So are we really taking steps to think about those things, or is technology just advancing so rapidly that we are not thinking about those aspects? Thank you.
Thanks for that. Yes, in I think the 4th row there.
Thanks so much. Konstantin Schiller from the European Commission. Now, personal opinion, not the one of my employer, just to be clear here. I think there's a little doubt in this debate that actually at some point we will reach a point where machines can and will replace teachers. But it's a far distant future that it's hard to predict how far distant, but it seems to be quite close. Now, the big question that I think you wanted to be debating is should. Should this happen? Should we embrace a vision of humanity where that is the way forward? Do we want to feed our children to an AI that then produces them, that then creates them into a shape that has been predefined? Is that the way to go, and do we want to agree with that?
Thank you. Yes, in the white shirt at the back there, by the wall. No, you've got a mic.
I don't have to shout anymore. I fear that the way most people think about artificial intelligence is the Terminator films, and that Arnold Schwarzenegger is irreparably linked to our concept of artificial intelligence. Terrible that it is. But the point really is that we think about artificial intelligence kind of like, at the moment, it's where the computer that landed humanity on the moon is. It's nowhere near as sophisticated as it will be in 10 or 20 years. But whenever I hear conversations about technology and where it's going, I always think of that great outcry about this technology is going to ruin the minds of the youth, and it's all about rock and roll, And I think that we are recidivistic and resistant to change and sentimental and nostalgic in a way that just limits the possibilities, right? I don't know if that's a question or a comment.
Okay, thanks for that. Right, one more, and then, yes, down at the front.
Thank you, Claudia from Austria. I fear that we're going in a direction where we are trying to replace the word teacher and everything that's in there, in that role, by mentor, coach, whatever you call it. And I find that the teacher is many roles, and looking at just one aspect is not enough and in fact dangerous in the future. I also think that you cannot be a good mentor or coach, for that matter, without knowing about the discipline. So that's an answer to the AI question. Do you have to, or could we replace lecturing by AI and then just mentor or coach? I think to be a good mentor and coach, especially in a formal system, you do need the knowledge. You do need that specific knowledge. So let's not take that role apart, and let's look at what we are doing at present as teachers. We have more than one role, and we should live them all, and we should stay in the driver's seat to make education work.
Okay, thank you very much for that, and thank you everybody for your contributions. I'm sorry if I haven't managed to call everyone, but we have already run out of time. So I'm going to ask one speaker from each side to sum up their arguments before we put everything to vote. And first of all, I'm going to ask Nell Watson to sum up briefly for the opposition. Nell.
I really appreciated the question about good teachers and bad teachers, or less good teachers, and about the importance of knowing the area or the domain that one is teaching in. Of course, not all teachers are created equally. And in fact, the style, quality, and energy that a teacher has will change over time. Environment tends to drive behavior. And unfortunately, some of the environments that young teachers especially find themselves in often lead to disillusionment and a sort of attrition, whereby teachers last for a few years and then disappear and go and do something else instead. I think that's very unfortunate. What I do believe, however, is that AI can be a powerful augment to any teacher, good or bad. It can help to provide early warning systems for the students that most need help, some of which are maybe quiet or aren't always the most talkative or the most outspoken. I think also that we can rely upon AI to help eradicate some of the least fun parts of teaching, some of the greatest chores, the things that we really would prefer never to face, or at least to reduce in its drudgery. I think if we can do that, then we can make the role of the teacher much more about those most irreplaceable aspects of teaching, the implicit, non-declarative knowledge, those cross-disciplinary awarenesses that lead to true understanding of a subject, and to focus on the sacred role of shepherding human flourishing.
Thank you for that, Nell. And now Donald for the proposition.
Yeah. I'll try and answer the questions collectively. There was a sort of convergence there. Nell mentioned the fact that we didn't evolve to be taught in a certain way. We didn't evolve to sit in a classroom for 13 solid years looking yearningly out of the window as a child. We didn't evolve to sit for 3 or 4 years and receive a diet of 1-hour lectures only because the Sumerians had a base 60 number system. We didn't evolve so that Mr. Schechter could decide one year that we're going to test every country in the world on mathematics so that our politicians could get obsessed by it and bring in the maths Taliban so that everyone was bored shitless learning maths until they almost die with boredom. We didn't evolve towards any of those things. There was no golden age here when teaching was brilliant. It's not sacred. For most people, it's a job. And for most kids, it's a chore. Words like homework. Homework. Have you ever been a parent and tried to get through that for 13 years?
But let me come back to another bigger moral issue about the future here. Just 2 weeks ago, I was teaching in the US in Penn State University, which is one of the big states, almost an Ivy League in the States. It has its own private airport in the middle of nowhere. It has its own football stadium that seats 110,000 people. It only plays 8 games a year. It has an ice hockey stadium. It has a basketball stadium. And it costs $46,000 a year to go there. We think that's part of the golden age. And I was in charge of 500 kids at a hackathon. And I asked them on a poll what they thought of the teaching at this institution. And I swear to God, there were 400 plus hands went up thinking it was appalling and that the lectures were dull and almost irrelevant. Most of these kids were techie kids, granted, but were mostly learning on their own. If we think that's the future, then think again. It's not the future in Africa, where we go with e-learning Africa every year. It's not the future for all those kids of the people who voted Brexit and Trump who don't go to college. They're fighting back. It may be that the system we have is actually producing inequalities, not solving the inequality problem. We have massive unemployment across Southern Europe, massive, but we're still churning out graduates by the dozen. If we don't see this as a wake-up call, a rethink about making education cheaper, more accessible, and maybe more inspiring. You know, it's not that teaching is great, but perhaps we have a glimpse here of a future. You saw my sister's reaction to that type of technology. If that comes along with AI, maybe we have a future of genuinely democratizing, disintermediating the institutional side of learning and getting on with the job of really changing the world as educators, as opposed to doing what Roger was describing this morning, churning them through endless, intensive tests. That's why I think this is a real opening to something really, truly wonderful and holistic, given enough time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, now it's decision time. It's up to you to decide now whether the proposition has done enough to convince you that that AI could, that it's technically possible, that it should, that it's desirable, and that it will, on the balance of probabilities, replace teachers. So would all those who are in favour of the motion that this House believes AI could, should, and will replace teachers, please raise their right hand. Raise one hand, and we will be watching. Right. Okay. All those against? I think that's overwhelmingly defeated. So the opposition wins. Not perhaps, given the audience, a terribly surprising result. But thank you all very much indeed for your participation, and thank you to all our speakers. And can I remind you that the party, the OEB party, perhaps the most important event of the whole conference, takes place at 8 o'clock this evening. So if you want to go and get your party clothes on and then reassemble downstairs for the party, it's got a very special flavour this year. It's all about occupied Berlin, so it should be a lot of fun. So I look forward to seeing you all there. Thank you very much indeed.